want to build on what Deacon Dave preached on last week and put us in the context of this liturgical time. As Deacon Dave mentioned, we are in week 2 of 5 of this Bread of Life discourse in chapter 6 of John's Gospel. Last week we heard about the abundance of God and multiplying the loaves and fish in order to feed the people. It's a sign that the Eucharist is abundant, both in the grace that it offers as well as the abundance that it's supposed to generate in us so that we become generous with others. And now look at what happens in this passage that follows immediately after the story we heard last week. Jesus does this amazing sign, this miracle for thousands to see. And then they follow him because, as Jesus says, it's not because they were moved by the sign, but it's not that they were moved by belief in him, we could say, but because they had full bellies. They were satisfied. They were fed enough. And this is so typical. And not just of them. We can't blame them because we do the same thing. How many of us have prayed for something and received it and immediately we take it for granted, as if we had done it ourselves? You know, when I was chaplain at a local high school just down the road, sports teams would come into the chapel for Mass when they were getting ready to go compete in a big tournament. And so they would come in and they would ask and we'd pray, and it was beautiful, really. In my 8 years, there was only one team who came back after they had won and gave thanks to God for what he had done for them and the grace that he had given to them. That's not exclusive to this local high school. I'm sure it happens all over the place, and it happens for us as well. We don't return to give thanks to God. We skip the sign. We skip the sign. Jesus does something for us in order for us to move to a deeper relationship with him. But we take the gift and we ignore the giver. And this is what happens to those following Jesus in the gospel. They happily take the bread, but they ignore the one who multiplied it. And this is their first error in judgment. The second error follows immediately afterward. They say, well, what sign can you do that you're greater than Moses, who provided bread, manna for our ancestors in the desert? And we could almost hear Jesus saying, oh, you mean aside from taking 5 loaves and 2 fish and feeding likely over 10,000 people. Aside from that, well, we can talk, you know. I mean, we could almost hear Jesus' frustration. And you see what's happening here. First, they follow him for the food, and then they follow him for another miracle. Show us something else. Put on a show for us so that we can believe in you. And in both cases, they're missing something crucial. Him. They're missing him. They miss him. He who is the source of life and salvation. And we can miss him too. You know, here they are, they see this beautiful thing, and in the face of it, they walk away and they don't even recognize that he is the one who has done this for them. And we can be the same. It's possible for us to come to Mass and not give a single thought to the person of Jesus Christ. It's possible that we come here, we creep into our pews, we enjoy the air conditioning, and we look at the people around us, and we roll through Mass like it's a drive-through. But we miss him. We miss him. Father Mike Schmidt said something at the Eucharistic Congress that has really struck me. I think for me it was the most important thing I heard at the Eucharistic Congress. He said that the point of Mass is not the presence of Christ, which sounds a little scandalous. Instead, the presence of Christ is what makes the point possible. The point of Mass is not the presence of Christ. Instead, the presence of Christ is what makes the point possible. In other words, it's essential, it's necessary that Jesus becomes present here at this Mass. But that's not the end game for us. The end game of the Eucharist is that once Jesus becomes present, he offers himself to the Father as a sacrifice for us. That's what Mass is for. Every Mass, when we put ourselves in front of Calvary, which happens at this altar, every Mass we stand in front of the Lord who says to us through time, this is my body given for you. This is my blood poured out for you. This is my life shed for you. Everything I have, I give to the Father on your behalf so that you can be clean, so that you can be loved, so that you can receive salvation, so that you can be reconciled to the one who made you for himself. I give everything for the sake of the people who have fallen away from me. I give everything so that they will know that they are loved by the Father and that they are worth dying for. That's why Jesus becomes present at every Mass. And that's why it's essential that he become present at every Mass, so that he can offer himself to the Father. And we see it as soon as he becomes present. He's lifted up in this Eucharist. Father Tyler will do it today. As soon as he becomes present in the bread, we elevate him to say, Father, receive your Son. As soon as he becomes present through the form of wine, we lift him up and we say, Father, this is your Son who shed his blood on Calvary. Take him, receive him on our behalf, because we don't have anything to merit salvation. All we have is what you have given us, your Son. And so we give you your Son. We offer your Son in sacrifice for us, because we have nothing to offer. We are here to witness and participate in the sacrifice of the Son of God to the Father. This is what Jesus means when he says in the gospel, the bread of God, that is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. He gives life to the world not by just showing up. You know, it's not like Jesus shows up at this Eucharist and says, hey, here I am. Isn't this nice? This is great. No, Jesus gives life to the world by grabbing on to all of humanity, by grabbing on to all of creation, all of its brokenness, all of its woundedness, and he lifts it back up to the Father. And he says, Father, I'm going to clean this up for you. I sacrifice, I wash this in my blood for you. And so it's not just his presence that we need, it's his willingness to offer himself to God for us. He gives life to the world by taking up all of its brokenness and giving it back to the Father. And that's why the mission that we are sent on when we leave Mass is not a mission to go out and simply to say, hey, Jesus is present. You should go see him. It's a nice thing to say, and we should say it, but it's not sufficient. It's not enough. We should say, look, you need to come to this Eucharist because here you can be restored. Because here, your sin is not the final word. Because here, God calls you by name, and he takes you to himself so that you can receive mercy and joy and hope. Our mission is to make the world holy by uniting ourselves to Christ and offering ourselves to the Father in sacrifice to him, so that no matter what you're doing in your family life, at work, when you're going shopping at Schnucks, whatever you're doing is an offering to the Father. Everything that we do in this world should be an offering to the Father, so that this life can mean something more, so it can take on a greater depth and purpose than just getting by, than just getting a paycheck. Our lives mean more, and Jesus shows us that by his sacrifice here in the Eucharist. And so let's pray, dear friends, that we can turn back to the Lord, that we can seek healing for our bruised and wounded hearts. And then, with joy, like Jesus, give everything to the Father.